Welcome to Mocktails and Money on Mondays.
All I hear, go get the money, so I go get it. Hate means I do something right, so I'ma let them.
Today we are starting a new trend. Hopefully we're going to continue this every Monday, but we will be discussing some newbie tricks to investments and trading. And tonight we're actually going to be discussing that whole GME debacle. If you haven't heard of it, we'll go into it a little bit later. But I also kind of wanted to share my story of how I got into investing and how profitable it actually was. So it's a great little side hustle, and I've actually just gotten Devin into it here. He was kind of skeptical, but he's already seen a $500 return on his first trade.
Should I be celebrating?
You should be celebrating.
I made money.
That's right. I was a hater at first. Very skeptical about the amount of money you could make investing. My dad was an investor and he lost a lot of money when AOL and Time Warner merged. So growing up, investing was this big boogeyman. But now, as you can see, when you hang out with Lauren and the proof is in the pudding, you put on the Robinhood hat, okay? You eventually submit, and that's why I look like I'm at an Irish wedding right now.
I make believers.
She makes believers.
Yes.
And so my goal in this is, if you're a newbie like me, what is investing to you? You know, what are the paths that you can take to avoid confusion, to avoid taking unhealthy risks, and to either start with a very manageable investment that gives you about 7 to 10% of your money every year. So imagine you've got $1,000, now you got $1,070 or $1,100. That's a conservative investment like the S&P 500, but then there's also what Lauren does, which is get a book about candlesticks and learn about stonks and options, and all of a sudden that number can get closer to 200%. So
that has been my experience. And I actually, initially I was totally, I had no idea about investments. I knew that you could make some money off of it, and there were people that were knowledgeable that were making a ton of money, but I had no idea that I could become one of those people, and very easily. I actually went to go buy my first nice car, and I had saved a lot of money, and I was just gonna buy it outright, and actually the dealer mentioned to me that I should consider a lease option, because then I could take the money that I wasn't using towards that car and invest it and make 8%. And I thought to myself, what bank? Like, where are you getting 8% back on your money? And he went in to say, well, obviously it's, investments. And so that kind of sparked something. And I started diving deeper, and I realized that, as Devin mentioned, just with the S&P 500 or SPY, that's an ETF. Buys the same stocks at a smaller portion than the S&P, so it's at a lower price point. The S&P 500, I believe it's at like 3,740 today.
Let me just speak for the dummies out there, because this is the dummies guide.
True.
The S&P is a brilliant thing. It's the top 500 companies in the country at one time. And if one falls out, another one is replaced. So essentially, when you're betting on the S&P, you're betting on the health of the nation. And before you go, okay, COVID, political disagreements, the nation's not looking that healthy right now. Consider this: aside from the Great Depression in the 1930s, the GDP, the S&P, the wealth of America has grown at a very steady pace for like 100 years. So the idea is you might invest $1,000 and have a 4% return year, but the next year you might have 13%, and overall it's going to average out to about 7 to 10%. Investors know this. People like me who think you have to work for every single dollar you earn and get screwed over anyway did not know this. So maybe you didn't know it.
And I didn't know this as well. So essentially what I did is I started researching. I looked for forums. And then I found Robinhood, which is getting a lot of slack right now for this whole GME thing. It's pretty much idiot-proof.
Yeah, and they give you little stars when you make a trade.
But look at all the confetti.
I mean, people are stupid, like we love little cues and bells and whistles.
What the Spectrum?
If I want to buy an option, I hit the button, it tells me what it means. There's an info section, and it's the equivalent of walking into an Apple store. For some reason, an Apple store is easier than going to Best Buy. It seems more intuitive to figure out what I want, how do I use it. And Robinhood is one of these new apps, new companies. People compare it to Fidelity, which is a long-standing app where you can do the same thing, and also doesn't have the same controversy Robinhood just got into, but it's not as intuitive. It's like trying to, figure out a Galaxy Note versus an iPhone, which some people are into. And we might have to get into after what happened to Robinhood.
I'll take a little detour onto that real quick. Vladimir Tenev, the CEO of Robinhood, or the founder of Robinhood, basically 3 a.m., I think it was Thursday morning is when all of this went down. The NSCC told him that he had to come up with $3 billion security. And so basically it's just the money that is guaranteeing his shares, essentially. So if anything goes wrong, people don't pay back. It's kind of like a down payment for him. But there was a stipulation that they had to restrict some trades. Basically, you can only buy a limited amount of GameStop, and then as far as options goes, those were limited as well.
Dummies explanation. So if you haven't heard the word GameStop spoken in the last couple weeks, if you have, you're probably confused. You're like, why are people talking about a video game store so much? GameStop became the central figure in sort of a clash between what we might call the typical investing community, hedge funds, big, retirement accounts, Wall Street essentially, and then what's known as retail investors, right? That's us. Before 10 years ago, there weren't apps out there where large numbers of individuals could do what hedge funds do. But Robinhood comes along, and then you've got something called Reddit, which is just an online community. And what happened is the hedge funds decided to short GameStop.
A short is when these big hedge funds, they borrow a stock from someone who owns it. Then they immediately sell that stock with the hope that the stock is going to drop in price. Typically, this is when something nefarious is going on with their financials, and there's really an actual underlying problem that hasn't come to the surface yet, so the stock hasn't dropped just yet. Oftentimes, there's a lot of billions of dollars to be made in this, so the big hedge funds might tell some falsehoods.
Well, the most damning proof of this was Kramer, the guy on CNBC, the guy who hits bells and shoots off confetti every time he makes a trade. This was on my television growing up all the time, and unfortunately he'll tell individuals who don't know much about the market to invest in things, and they end up losing a lot of money, because if he's telling you to invest in something, a lot of people are investing in it. And Kramer, there's an interview that went viral where he admitted to shorting stocks like this on purpose just to make money, and then giving the advice on his show. And he said, it's legal. It's perfectly legal. Unfortunately, when Reddit saw the short sell, they said, we're all going to come together and we're going to buy
So here's the hinge point, is that if the stock doesn't drop, then these big hedge funds have to go back and buy the stock at the new higher price, because they've just borrowed this stock. They still have to give it back to the original owner. So this is where the Reddit community saw potential to really kind of bend the hedge funds over.
They punched Goliath.
They punched Goliath. I believe it's like every $7 is $1 billion, at least for the volume that these hedge funds took out. And I believe it was 148% that they took out on this short position.
So the bottom line is, something that is legal and typically practiced amongst hedge funds, which is playing these games of shorting, rising prices up, taking businesses out of commission, or inflating them to an unreasonable degree. That's legal in the hedge fund world. But when Reddit did it, when a bunch of individuals like us came together and did it, it was interesting to watch CNBC, because all of a sudden it was like, we need regulation. We need to protect the hedge funds. It's the first time you'll ever see CNBC advocating for regulation. So that'll tell you something. And then the second thing happened, which Robinhood made it impossible to trade GameStop. They're just now kind of backtracking on that and saying, we're sorry, we were pressured. But Lauren got on Clubhouse yesterday and she was able to listen to Elon Musk directly interview the head of Robinhood about why would you make this unprecedented move to forbid us from trading GameStop simply because it was the object of a Reddit revolution, as they're calling it.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was Elon Musk came on. It was like a small or it was a private group, and I think it's supposed to max out at like 5,000 people, and I think the room that I was in maxed out at around 7,000, and then there were 7 other rooms that were maxed out. So he definitely had a huge audience. But he brought Vladimir on, and it seemed as though they were friendly, and he was gonna stand up for his buddy. But he actually really went into him and went full journalistic style. And I think he came up with some really interesting points. He made his point clear. We're a small company. We only have so much venture capital. We literally couldn't pay the $3 billion.
So in the community that I hang out in, which is not the wealthiest, it's a lot of stand-up comedians and artists and weirdos, a lot of them took this as like a clarion call to, it's sort of an Occupy Wall Street moment. They're saying, hold GME, as though we'll show them. And a lot of people, the swipe against retail investors like us is that we're uninformed. We're sort of like grandmas going into a casino and just pulling on the slots. So the slight and the reason they're advocating for regulation is they're going to say 1 million people might buy GameStop when it's worth nothing, and they're going to lose all their money. So they're claiming that they're protecting us. But the people I know who are talking about this are demonstrating an incredible amount of financial acuity and awareness. I think Lauren's a great example of how your average investor now has so many resources available to them that they can reach a level of financial literacy pretty quickly. And a lot of the people I was hearing from were saying, we're going to leave Robinhood, we're going to go to Fidelity, and we're going to hold GameStop, as though to say, we're going to be players in this. We're not afraid of the hedge funds. And if you're a new investor, I wouldn't advocate for jumping into an Occupy Wall Street situation, but it's interesting.
I agree and I disagree because I think a lot of young people, it's become very popular because Robinhood is so easy. A lot of kids have started trading and they're really good, and they probably know more than I do, honestly. But there are also a lot of young investors that don't have a lot of capital, and they're putting their life savings, everything they own, into a stock that they don't know anything about. I think smart trading, I look at a business as a whole. And the most important thing for me is a business's mission statement. And if they're actually doing things to accelerate that mission statement or prove that mission statement. If you don't know, my favorite stock is Tesla. They are moving towards efficiency and green planet. Every step that they take is pushing towards that, but they are definitely a company that is pushing the boundaries versus GM is another car company. They're saying they're going EV. They want to be completely EV by 2025, but then they rolled out 15 new cars, and I believe only 3 of them are actually EV. So it's not following their mission statement. It's a deceit. And really they're just after the profits, which, yes, the profits are great, but if there's corruption within the company, I think it's not going to be sustainable. So
there's a lot of good things to be said for Tesla, and nobody will say them. My experience with Lauren,
everyone hates Tesla.
And she loves Tesla, and she's made an incredible amount of money off of Tesla by sort of looking at the fundamentals, looking at what the trends that are happening, looking at the fact that every time you look out the window, there's a Tesla on the road. It's like the way Prius took over Uber and Lyft. A Prius isn't a great car, but it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And Tesla has turned a fully electric car into a company that's bigger than Nissan or bigger than one of these these gigantic, auto relics. So I felt there's something interesting happening here with Tesla. The liberals love it because it's green. Republicans love it because it's green in that other way. But every single person told Lauren to short it and sell it. And it's just more evidence that this ecosystem of retail investing is not the casino. If anything, I would say people are highly cautious now. And Lauren's experience and my experience from just a few weeks of doing this is that if you're smart, if you listen to authorities, or if you listen to your own authority, there's a lot of money to be made. And with a company like Tesla, let me just ask you this. In 6 months, is Tesla going to be smaller than it is now or bigger?
Probably bigger.
Probably bigger. I like a giant company that manages to get plugs installed all over the country, and this guy's like the top news story now that Trump is gone. All people want to talk about is Elon Musk. So he's got that Steve Jobs quality and that vision and that ability to create a coherent worldview because he's at the center of it. I think there's a lot to say for Tesla. But if we applied this same standard to GameStop, what would we come up with? Because we kind of broke them down, right? They survived the pandemic better than most.
Yeah, they survived the pandemic, but are they coming up with anything that's going to change the world?
Well, here's what I'll say for GameStop. So I believe GameStop is a profitable company and a good investment. The way they were inflated on Reddit, people are just saying that's too much. It's not worth that much. Still, they're a good company for two reasons. Right when this pandemic started, I decided to get a Nintendo Switch. I was lonely. I was looking for something to just heal the pain. And I walked into 10 GameStops and they said, that isn't available anywhere. And the GameStop has a deal with the manufacturers where they are usually one of the only people who can sell, a PS5, for example, or a Nintendo Switch. And with the pandemic, obviously people have been going home and getting into video games. So I felt like in the same way I'm looking at Tesla from an idiot's perspective. Remember, I'm the dummy, but I read a lot and I pay a lot of attention to everything. So from that somewhat ignorant perspective, I can look at Tesla and go, something's happening there. But I can also look at GameStop and go, something's probably happening there too. Is it big enough to, what was the stock price at the end of this?
$540 a share, and I think it was like a month before it was $17 a share. It was just an astronomical, I forget what the percentage was. I wasn't even paying attention because once it hit a certain point, you're already too late to the game. Because with options, and I mostly trade in options, you pay someone a down payment with the promise that if the stock hits this price by this date, I'll buy these 100 shares at that set price, which is usually
like you're betting
higher,
on horses, right?
Yeah. It's either higher for a call or lower for a put. Typically, you want to sell it before that date. You sell the option to somebody else, and they purchase it and they pay you directly. And
the long and short of that is that I did it on Plug, which is a company that's manufacturing some of these electric plugs. Same reason we're seeing a huge windfall on Tesla. And by the way, I'm not just making this up. I'm also looking at what Lauren's doing. I said that must be true for Plug as well. And we put out an option over 2 weeks, and it's kind of fun. I mean, you're looking at it. You're like, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? I shouldn't look at it. And then for 10 days, it stayed around the same. And then right before the option ended, it jumped. And I made 100% on my investment and, walked away with $500. So I'm starting with small potatoes here, but 100% is big margins. And that was on my first options trade. So, I mean, it takes a little bit of discipline to know when to sell it. Because if it's going up, you're like, Lauren made this mistake. Maybe I'll make some more money if I wait another day.
Yeah.
But I was right in there.
I made the call for him. I told him he should cash out because it was pretty close and it was a good price. And so I told him to sell at an exact price. We put in like a limit sell. And then I decided to go like $2 above it.
Lauren is going to hold out till 15 in case some sort of anomaly happens. And that's pretty ballsy. And it's working for her.
I'm a crazy person, and it hurts me more to lose the potential of making a larger profit than making or losing everything.
It makes you very unusual because there's a sunk cost fallacy, or I think it's the sunk cost fallacy. Essentially, it means people are more afraid of losing something they already have than not gaining something they could. But Lauren's the opposite, which makes her incredibly profitable. Because
it's happened to me before. And it was actually, this is why I'm such a diehard for my Tesla options and holding Tesla, even if it burns me. I had a Tesla option, and I think I made a profit. It was $1,000 that I made on it. Somebody advised me to sell it. It would have been worth over $30,000. Instead of making that $30,000, I would have rather lost $300 than knowing that I left $30,000 on the table.
It's like seeing a beautiful person at a wedding or something and not being confident enough to ask them for a dance. It's like you never know what could have been.
Yeah.
What could have been. This is all broadly called making money from having money. And if you haven't become aware of this, most money that is generated in this country is generated from wealth. But the rich, the wealthy, they're sort of educated in a different way. When they have their birthday or their bar mitzvah, there's a little bit of, hey, when you're old enough, I'll show you how to turn that trust fund into 8 times as much. And I know the guy who regulates it.
If any of you have actually read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the first time somebody hands you that book, or I think it's like Rich Dad's Guide to Investing is also a really great book. It's 100% true. If you grow up in a middle class or, like blue collar family, nobody ever tells you about investing. Me growing up, I came from a middle class family, but for some reason in my brain, I never thought that anyone should ever be working to help me survive. As soon as I was 11 years old, I got a job because there were things that I wanted. I wanted to go to Starbucks and get a Frappuccino. Like I wasn't interested in food. I wanted 10 Frappuccinos a day, and I had to feed that monster. Yeah, I was a Frappuccino junkie, especially the caramel macchiato Frappuccino. You gotta be kidding me. So that was my driving force. But I knew I had to work for that money. And that kind of continued throughout my life. And I never really was pushed to do anything fantastic. I was a waitress before I was a private chef on a private jet. And I was totally content with being a waitress. I made a decent wage. I never thought about investment. I never thought about retirement.
You were calling this the glass ceiling, right?
This was the glass ceiling. I was, I made my own hours. It was great. I loved being a waitress. And then as soon as I got into this lifestyle of seeing these private jets and seeing the billionaires and learning their work ethic, it's like these people have billions of dollars. They're on a private jet and they are working the entire time. Like we're headed to the Maldives and this guy's up all night, working on a proposal or his latest business venture. That really shocked me. And it was like, they've already got the life that we all want. Why are they working so hard still? Just having a little bit of that mentality of maybe this isn't it. I can go beyond. I can do something that's really going to help me in the long run.
But this will bring it full circle. So the nice thing about retail investors that are discovering the rich dad, poor dad philosophy, the idea that I'm not going to make $1 million on a paycheck. I'm going to make $1 million through investments. This isn't just me. Every amazing rapper I listened to growing up said this. At some point you got to realize it's the investments, it's not the sale. And it's like I've heard 1 million different people of all levels of society push this message home for me. But when you start, slipping into this world, maybe make elements of that available to the common man. Hence, Robinhood. Steal from the rich and give to little John. That was my full circle.
That was his full circle. And we miss you too.
I miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
glad
Stacey.
that you enjoyed it, Stacey. It's been fun.
Yeah, we normally don't get into the money stuff, but it's a part of a pyramid. So we're making videos together now. If you guys can subscribe to @thewhy.life, this is what we're doing with our money, okay? We're rebuilding the van and traveling across the country and meeting weirdos and having life experiences. So I hope you guys will follow us there. You got to talk about money. I remember my mom pulled me aside. I was always like a creative kid. She says, make money. She's like, she just saw what not having enough all the time did to her, my dad, the family. It's just a good idea. Even if you are a good person and you're a counselor at a school, or you're working long hours at an office job, or you're a mother, you stay-at-home mother, you know, there's nothing wrong with making enough money so that you can leave your influence on the world. Right now, the people who have most of the wealth are not people-loving, vagabond weirdos who want to spread joy. You know, if those people could get a little bit more money, we could have fun. We could party. Not just us, you. Yeah,
you could party as well, yes.
Very informative. I'm definitely ready for you too.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks, Kat.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. We'll make you some green, of course.
We will. Maybe next time it'll be about personal development, relationships, or more money, right?
It's going to be money because it's money
Money,
Mondays.
money,
Mocktails.
and
We didn't
So I go get it.
even tell you guys. We made these fantastic mocktails.
I didn't make them.
I did. The recipe for the mocktail, maybe I'll post it. I don't know. But I'll tell you live right now because they're really delicious and it's our new favorite thing. This one is ginger kombucha by Synergy. I did a little bit of fresh lemon juice. I used Zivia. It's a lemon lime with some bitters as a mixer. And then top it with a healthy dose of some apple cider vinegar for an extra little kick. The rice vinegar has a nice maltiness to it, so it gives it kind of the taste of alcohol. So it tastes like a boozy drink, but it's booze free. So when you need to be clear-headed when you're thinking about your money and making that green, this is the way to go.
And we'll be serving these at the local AA chapter meeting, okay?
We will not because...
I always like to say, flirt with the dragon. Flirt with its tail. Anymore? Hey, this was a great success. Thank you all so much. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.